How's it going, friends? Today, I'm back in the world of Cosmere. If you're clicking on this video, odds are you probably already know what the Cosmere is. For those that might have stumbled onto this video and you're uninitiated into the Cosmere universe by Brandon Sanderson, the Cosmere is a collection of planets that a lot of the media that Brandon Sanderson creates takes place on. He's got short stories, he's got novels, he's got comics. Each planet's got their own magical system and shards and drama. Today, I want to talk about the beings that live on these planets that move from planet to planet. Worldhoppers, I guess you could call them. They show up all across the books, and sometimes you might not even notice them. So I thought today would be a good day to just take a look through every book that Brandon Sanderson has released in the Cosmere, and we'll just list off the Worldhoppers that show up in them. All those little Easter eggs hiding in between the pages where they don't belong. I've got my super sleuth eyeglass out. I'm coming for them. First, I want to add a disclaimer. We're not talking about Hoid in this video. I want to make a whole video for Hoid. There's way too much going on there. What I can say is Hoid is found in every single story of the Cosmere except for 3. Even then, technically only 2 because he's mentioned in that other one. In order to kind of make this a bit spoilery safe for you, I'll have little chapter thingies down in the line of time, and you'll be able to select which books you want to hear about where the Worldhoppers are. So, you know, you read a few of the Brandon Sanderson Cosmere books now, you check them out, you forget about this for a while, and you read some more, and you're like, wasn't there that great video where, like, all the Worldhoppers got listed? I should check that out for the new things I've been reading. And then you come back here. So, let's start with the short stories that don't have Worldhoppers in them at all. The first short story on that list is The Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. This story takes place on the planet Threnody. We know that a Worldhopper comes from this planet, but I'll talk about them later. They don't actually show up in this story. In fact, I don't think we see any Worldhoppers in this book. Even in the foreword that Brandon Sanderson wrote for the short story, he says, there's no Hoid, don't worry. The second short story on the list is The Sixth of Dusk. This takes place on the planet The First Sun. Again, we see a character or 2 from this planet later, but once more, no Hoid, no Worldhoppers, no fun. Now, let's talk about some of the books that have Worldhoppers in them, but this is the world they're from. This is their home. It's not out of place for them to be here. This might even be their villain origin story. No, their villain origin story. Mistborn Era 1 has absolutely no Worldhoppers in it except for Hoid. However, we do get introduced to 2 characters that you should keep an eye on later on in other series. We've got Felt, who shows up in the Final Empire. He's described as a pale-skinned, hawkish man, and he's got a drooping mustache. On Scadrial, he's one of the spies for House Venture. He'll be back. The other person to keep an eye on in Era 1 is Demo. He first shows up in the Final Empire. He and Kelsier kind of have, like, they build some bonds of trust during the Ska Rebellion. He's in, like, his early 20s when the events of Era 1 happen, and so he's got a lot of life to live, and maybe live it on other planets. I don't know, maybe. The next story that introduces us to some Worldhoppers that haven't done some world hopping yet is Whitesand. This graphic novel takes place on the planet Taldane, which is tidally locked, so you've got, like, a day side and a night side, like that one movie. No, it wouldn't be like that one movie, because that one movie, it moves, because there's that scene where they gotta run and they gotta climb, and I mean, I think light moves way faster than Vin Diesel, but I digress. Taldane's got sand magic. The daytime side is a lot more primitive, I think, than the nighttime side, which has a lot of technology. I think they've got, like, guns and instant noodles, which is something that Hoid talks about and is super excited to probably get Scadrial to figure out. Chrysala shows up in this story. Chris, this is her home planet, but she's gonna be seen elsewhere. She's a big one. She's one of the big, put Chris in your big Rolodex. You got a small Rolodex of all the unimportant characters. Put Chris in the main one. That's just, it says Hoid, and you pull that back, it just says Chris. She travels to the dayside in search of her fiance, who disappeared, and everyone else thinks he's dead, but she wants to make sure. And she actually goes to the dayside with another Worldhopper, Bayon. He's described as pragmatic and blunt. We'll see more of him later. Elantris also has some homebound Worldhoppers. Galadon and Reno are 2 that show up in Elantris. Both are native to Sel. Galadon is, of course, who Rauden meets on the first day in Elantris, and kind of shows him the ropes of how it really sucks to be an Elantrian. He's got silver skin, he's bald, with a tall, firm frame. He's fairly pessimistic as well. Reno shows up in Elantris. Rauden realizes that Reno was an Elantrian before everything went bad. He's found often uttering beautiful, once so very beautiful. He does have a moment of sanity and convinces Rauden to kind of put him in this well, and then at the end of that book, he just kind kind of vamooses, turns into dust. But, you know, it was a perpendicularity he used, so we know that he went to the cognitive realm here. That's step one of world hopping. This is a great transition into Mistborn Secret Histories, which takes place mostly in the cognitive realm. This is our first big Cosmere-focused story, and so we do see a lot of world hoppers here, I guess. Anyone in the cognitive realm is probably a world hopper at this point. I mean, if you're in the cognitive realm, you could get to other worlds, but it's not like they actually hop to the worlds. So I guess you could call them like realm hoppers, shadow walkers. I don't know. We'll call them world hoppers still. If you want more on the cognitive realm, I do have a little video that talks about more realmatics that kind of explain what these different realms are and what's going on and what are the properties of the cognitive realm, and I'll link that right here. I'm sorry, you're welcome. But of course, we've got Kelsier here. He's a cognitive shadow now, as he's stuck. He's not really a world hopper. He's kind of stuck in the sub-astral for Scadrial right now in the cognitive realm, but I'm sure he's working on that. Man, if only he could come up with some way to easily traffic a quickly gatherable source of investiture that could potentially help him get off the sub-astral. Maybe he'll figure that out in Era 5 of Mistborn. We do get a bunch more world hoppers from Cell in this book. We got Alano, Elrau, Maur, and Rena. They all show up. They're from the Eyrie, but this is kind of their first appearance. The Eyrie are just a group who escaped into the cognitive realm from Elantris. We also note that we got some critical reappearances here. We've got Chris, who shows up. She says hi to Kelsier. She's like, oh, hello! And she brings her best friend, Naz. Naz is going to be making an appearance elsewhere, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But he does end up giving Kelsier a knife, and that knife has since been lost, and in fact, the sundering, the reshaping of Scadrial happened, and Kelsier dropped that knife, and it kind of fell into all the magma-y goopy goop, so potentially someone's got that knife right now. I don't know. I don't read Mistborn. But like I said, Chris and Naz show up. Naz is a world hopper from Threnody, where the Shadows for Silence happens. And a little fun fact about Chris, now this is her second time up, so I gotta come up with something interesting to say about her. She knows more about the whole entire Cosmere than Hoid does. And Hoid's been around for ever. She also often sends Naz out to do all the research for her, and then she just kind of hangs back. And sometimes she's not so nice about where she just drops him off and forgets about him. Anyway, moving over to Nalthis, we've got a couple of characters here in Warbreaker that world hop. They not only warbreak, they world hop. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry. It wasn't even really a joke. It was just kind of just words going together. But anyway, a world hopper here that shouldn't be from this world is Lemix's nurse. Lemix is the chief spy in Hallandren for King Dedelin, but he was being poisoned by Dent, and his nurse is actually a terrace woman from Scadrial. This information is not at all provided to us within the reading, but Brandon has confirmed that she is in fact the terrace woman world hopper that he has brought up at other times during Q&A. And he also promised that we're going to be seeing her again in the future. We also know that she has access to at least one of the metallic arts, so I'm excited to see whatever her POV is going to be. Jumping back to Mistborn for a hot second, Era 2 brings us a couple of more world hoppers than Era 1 did. Naz and Chris show up once more in Alloy of Law. We get a map of Elendel with Naz's notations on them. We also see both of these characters make appearances in Bands of Mourning. Chris shows up in New Saran, where she dances with Wax and asks him some questions about his powers. Also, we get both that mentioned in the New Ascendancy, the newspaper clippings that we see, where they're like, hey, do you hear hammers talk to you in the night? Come talk to us. We're gonna help you out with that. Naz also shows up in a different article in the newspaper, the Ghastly Gondola incident, where he and Nacelle Savage, he really wants to get this map of New Savan from her, and they end up ripping it in half, and the half that he doesn't get has a secret little compartment in the back that discloses the location of the unknown constructs of antiquity. Now, we're finally getting to where the Cosmere really comes together, where all the hoppers have scotched all their way to the planet of Roshar. Roshar is the convergence of most world hoppers in this universe, it seems. It makes sense. There's some wild stuff going on there. Stormlight is a type of investiture that's really easy to come across and absorb. It's likely the easiest to get in large quantities now that I think about it. Imagine someone from Nalthis needing to have a daily breath, and then all of a sudden you go to Roshar and look at all this Stormlight. It's still investiture, just you gotta figure out how you can convert it into the equivalent of a breath, and boom bam, just wait for a storm and you got like at least a billion breaths. In the Way of Kings, in the very first interlude, we're introduced to the first 3 Worldhoppers here. We get 3 travelers that show up in the Pure Lake, and an Ishik fisherman POV shows us them from his perspective being from the planet, so we don't get a whole bunch of insight into why they're here or what they're doing. He decides to name these characters Thinker, Grump, and Blunt, and these are in fact previously named characters: Demo, Galadon, and Bayon. 3 Worldhoppers from 3 very different planets, all coming together in search of Hoid as members of the 17th Shard. And the 17th Shard is a secret organization that is all about non-intervention and also capturing Hoid mostly. I think they say non-intervention, but it's the anti-Hoid, anti-social club. I talk about them a lot more in a video that I do about secret societies. But anyway, there is one other Worldhopper that gets mentioned in the Way of Kings, and that would be Mraize. He's from here, he's Thalen, but he is still a Worldhopper. That is confirmed. He's got his green chicken, which is an AVR, which is from the same planet as the Sixth of Dusk, so he has to have either gone there or knows people who have come from there. Moving on to Book 2, Words of Radiance. We see Mraize again. Naturally, he's there, but we do get to meet his Bapsk, or his teacher. Bapsk is a Thalen word for that. She's got a mask which culturally is from Southern Scadrial, so we assume, and I think we've gotten confirmed, that she is in fact from Scadrial, so she is a Worldhopper that shows up on Roshar from Scadrial. Naz also shows up in this book if you look closely enough. Of course, he's got his notes from the different pages that you might see following Shallan when her boat crashes in the Frostlands. He's got his notes on the Bridge 4 tattoos, as well as the different Shardblade stances. We also get mentioned of him being escorted out of a Bridge 4 meeting that he tried to sneak into, pretending to be an Ardent. We've got some other notes that he stole from Shallan. So mostly you just got Naz being like a little rat running around the Bridge crew stealing stuff. But Naz isn't the only off-worlder we get in Words of Radiance. We've got Vasher from Nalthis showing up, of course. He makes his appearance as Zahel, the Swordmaster. You're gonna see him making tons of references to colors and animals that don't exist and just being generally grumpy, so we know that's him for sure. And of course, the big man on campus, Nightblood, shows up. He makes a little guest appearance at the end of this book. Seth finds him and, you know, he grabs this dark, shadowy shard blade, and then it goes, "Hello, would you like to destroy some evil today?" And, you know, if you see a boy with trails of smoke and he wants to destroy evil, you know that man's name is Nightblood. He's probably the reason that Vasher is on Roshar. We don't really have answers as to why Nightblood got here, how he got here. We do know that we're gonna get a second book in the Warbreaker series called Nightblood, and it's going to happen just before they leave to go to Roshar, and we're gonna get more on Vasher and Nightblood's backstory. It's building up to the events that lead them to Roshar. It's not necessarily how they got here or why they're here. Anyway, with all the excitement that Words of Radiance gave us, Oathbringer only builds on the number of Worldhoppers. I think Oathbringer actually has the most Worldhoppers in a single book. Nightblood is of course prominent throughout as we're getting POVs from Seth. Mraize continues to be doing his spy thing. We see Naz again in the form of annotated notes that are going to be sent back to Chris. And hang on a minute, who's that hawkish featured man in the Dalinar flashback when he goes to talk to the Night Watcher? And he knows about birds that aren't chickens. Oh wait, is that Fel? Weren't you a spy for Ellen Venture? Now you're kicking it back with the Blackthorn himself. I see you snuggling up to the biggest name in town. And why do you know so much about the Night Watcher? Other appearances that are critical in this book, we also get to see Reno after his 12-year gap from being dissolved in that pool. We meet him again. He's in a lighthouse in the cognitive realm. He looks like he's doing well. And, you know, Kaladin shows up and has that spiritual realm moment where Reno's like, don't touch this, and then Kaladin's like, I'm so gonna touch that. And who is this girl boss of a leader that shows up to help out the Alethi? She also seems to reference colors and a hatred of a certain man. Oh, it's Vivenna. Vivenna is Azure hunting down Vasher. We don't know why she's hunting down Vasher. They seem pretty cool at the end of the last book. Maybe Vasher's done a genocide since then. This does, though, give us a really cool scene in the cognitive realm when Adolin, Vivenna, and Kaladin all start doing the training sword yoga that Vasher's taught them. And they're doing like a little flash mob out of nowhere, and everyone else is really confused, and they're just like, my teacher taught me this. That's a fun scene. I like that scene a lot. They're doing their little dancey dance. Well, it doesn't really count. I'm gonna count it for this. Frost technically shows up in the epigraphs from a letter that is to Hoid, that Hoid had written the first half of in Words of Radiance. They're talking about some big Cosmere implications in this letter, and you know, that's probably a good name to have in your smaller Rolodex for the future. Final book. Critical revelations take place here. Felt continues to be beep booping around. Even he's going with Shaladin. Oh, yeah. He's going with Shallan and Adolin to the cognitive realm as one of the members of their expeditionary crew that goes to lasting integrity. He's actually the one that notices that the Takari group is following and informs Adolin of that. That later Adolin then taps his inner guts and just mutilates with a sword. Murray's here giving us ever critical information about the Ghostbloods and their plans. And it turns out that they are indeed reliant on the need to be able to transport investiture off world, and that's what they're trying to do, and hopefully even get it to their boss, Theta-Kar, or as we learn in this book, Kelsier, stuck in his little subastral cognitive realm, told to survive and last. I can only imagine he's trying to figure out how to get that investiture to him so he can just get away from Scadrial. Now, it's slowly making sense why Ayatil is a member of the Ghostbloods. Up until this point, it might have seemed weird that she was there. A Worldhopper from Scadrial, what's she doing with these Ghostbloods that only show up on Roshar? It's because they were probably the Ghostbloods were founded on Scadrial. Nightblood continues to be a core critical component of the Stormlight Archive, and honestly, he's becoming more important here than he was in Warbreaker, probably. Vasher is showing up again as well, and he's dropping some really cool, deep Cosmere information. He's telling us about cognitive shadows. That's probably important for a video that I'm going to bring up later. He messes with some towels and sends some ghosts to Kaladin to disgruntle him, and then he disappears for the rest of the book. And then Brandon says he was doing something. What was he doing, Brandon? Why are you gonna do that to me? Vivenna is presumably still around. She gets mentioned, but I don't think we actually see her in this book. She's off trying to figure out how to go through a perpendicularity. Well, don't worry. She'll get figured out. 16 is a character that we meet in Lasting Integrity, and while he is a Worldhopper, we don't actually know where he's from. While some people think that he's the Conjure Worldhopper, this could be, but I don't think so. I think the Conjure Worldhopper is actually Felt's wife, who also shows up in the last book. We have no confirmation for that. We've got nothing on that, but I think that's who it is. Sazed also makes an appearance here, technically, or Harmony shows up. He sends a letter in part 2. The epigraphs for part 2 are to Hoid. He provides us the names of the other shards in the Cosmere. Most importantly, he tells us about Whimsy. And the final big appearance here is that of Axandwith, the Ferrochemist who has the Metal Mind rings. She was the one who gave Venli Ulam in the flashbacks. She has since fled Roshar, but she was another Terrace woman, so I got some theories about what she could be tapping into in those Metal Minds, but we'll have to see if she makes a return. Woo! There we go. There it is. That's Every Worldhopper. I really hope I didn't miss a Worldhopper. That would be awkward. I spent a lot of time setting up. I had a whole Google Doc. It had a lot of names. I was trying to make sure that it had everyone, but you know, there's a lot of content in the Cosmere. So hopefully this gave you a few aha moments, or at least helped you map out everyone and make sure that you kind of saw, oh, that is a Worldhopper, or even, oh, I have read those books. That's really cool. They're in there. If any of those situations happen to you, maybe I read your mind, hit that like button. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. I'm coming around with Cosmere content all the time. I've got other books I'm talking about. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one. And until then, stay lit.